And for the next competence, we deal with the working environment, specifically the environment that was within my teaching practice school. I went to ISF Waterloo in Brussels, and here I learned about the history curriculum that they use in the British system. I should mention that ISF is Google Chrome school. Like they use Chromebooks in their education and get supported by Google to provide the next generation with these skills that are specific towards using electronic devices as laptops and build their skills for working in the environment of the modern world. So in the environment where it's vital to have basic skills about the internet and knowing how to make a PowerPoint, and those are that's a part of their educational approach and should be mentioned in the working environment. So they're a Cambridge International Examinations School, if that makes sense. They use the Cambridge exam, the British system, I call it. So they have ICGSE and A-level classes in their secondary school program. In history, this means that they have a set of examinations that the students have to perform in their years. They have in ICGSE, they have 4 papers they have to make within the course of this year. The exact dates are put together by the examiners board and are the same as the ones in Great Britain. And their topics vary. The teacher gets a list or a curriculum list with the topics listed, and they can get used or choose a path A and a path B, and then there's a couple of versions within those paths that they can make, and they can prepare their students for a specific subtopic. So what happened in my teaching practice school is that my mentor teacher only got in January. He started working there for half a year. She had to fill in for a teacher that fell or that got fired before her. She wasn't really the details weren't shared with her, and she wasn't really comfortable sharing them further to me. So basically, she only was there for half a year, which means that the topic was already chosen, and she had to continue to teach up on that topic. We dealt with the Cold War and the consequences or like the lead up to the Cold War in class, and that is also the topic of the students' paper 4, which is a specific like in-depth study. It's for the depth study. I believe 4 is the depth study, and then 1 is like a general one, and then 3 is all about sources. No, 2 is all about sources, and 3 is the classwork. So you have to like grade the students' work every time they hand something in, and all those grades get combined together in paper 3. And the way that we prepared for paper 4, because they were going to have their examination of this paper in like 2 to 3 weeks when I was there for my teaching practice. So we practiced one of the classes we used during the week. We practiced example papers, and I actually got to grade those papers as well and see how students improved in those 2 weeks, or like specifically how they were more inclusive in answering their questions, so they were able to provide more information, or they were able to better word their information, which was really nice. The A-level students have a similar structure, but because technically speaking they don't fall under secondary school because of their age, I didn't spend too much time on their curriculum and focus more on the ICGSE students. Let's see. I need to find. Oh, of course, the other lessons we had. Of course, we had. So we had. Depending on the year. So the year 1 ICTSE had 5 classes, and year 2 had 3 classes. I believe it might be the other way around. No, I think year 1 had 5 classes, and year 3 had 3 classes per week in history, and one of those for both years was used as exam prep, and the others were used to teach the regular information. Like, and with the ICTSE 1, my mentor teacher used a system of starting with a refresher. So all students had this timeline of sense about the topic, and every time the lesson started, they had to get their timeline and add either a topic of the lesson or review the timeline and see if they had all the topics previously. This was in February, so we dealt with a cold situation. A lot of people fell ill for a day or two, and in this point you could just check if everyone had the necessary facts, and these facts were key elements of the topic. So in studying, these would be the ones that they'd have to know about. It's really nice for them to have like a visual reminder of the important parts, and they're able to digress from the fact that those are key, and the other ones can be neglected for a specific portion, I guess. And that was most of the lessons were built like that. From that, there will be a subtopic teaching part, which involved a lot of questioning and a lot of students teaching the subtopic, and then there would be the activity, either a group activity or an individual activity, or we did a discussion once. We did think pair share ones as well, or on something that resembled that, like they had to think about the answer and share it. Yeah, it was a think measure. But then with different worksheets involved. And then in the final lessons, or like the lesson before the last lesson, we do the paper, and the lesson after that we discuss the paper and then finish up the topic of the week. That was the basic general system of it. And then the school itself had this system of weekly meetings. So the entire school, it's not that big of a school. It does consist of a primary school, a secondary school, and a creche for people, for kids that are from, I believe, 2 months old to the year 4. And all these teachers get together on Monday evening after class. They have a general discussion about issues that go beyond their scope of class, or they think other teachers should be aware of or should know about. A specific student had issues getting along in her history subject, which was fine in the other subjects that was brought up. And one of the ADHD students that was in the history subject as well switched courses halfway throughout my teaching practice. She was brought up to discussion. So general personal, and if it's really too personal, it first gets discussed or like brought up in email system. An email system they used, they had their own email account of the school, and they used that for inter-teacher communication a lot. I was allowed to attend 2 of these meetings on Monday. We didn't really get to talk much about the students or anything because they had this clinic planned about ADHD and what it was and how you could recognize it in the classroom. And then the other week, it would have been the week after I'd left, it would have been a follow-up clinic about how to teach people with ADHD. But I've learned a lot about the symptoms or like the signals of someone that is just a hyper kid or is someone that actually has attention issues and suffers from or has to deal with ADHD. And these were led, most of the time these discussions were led by the deputy head. The head of the school, that's the one that wasn't really present as much, but the deputy head was the one that even I could go to if there were circumstances. As I mentioned before, there was a flu wave, I got sick one day, he was the person I had to call for that, as well as the fact that he's the one that introduced me the first day and led me around the school premises the first day, and was the one that asked for my opinion or updates on and that kind of stuff, even though my mentor teacher was the one I followed or literally shadowed her entire schedule of the day. I wanted to mention this particular policy that the school used, which I thought was really interesting, because they are a very small school, but they have very, very many nationalities. And they encourage the students that have the same nationality as each other to speak in their native languages with each other, for they think they or they see that the students are able to explain to each other if one of them doesn't understand something in their own language better than they can in English. So they can help each other. I'm sorry. They can help each other gain a better understanding and learning better by fixing the communication issue that would come across in English and going into that in a national language. However, most of the time people try to take away those individualistic part of culture. They try to generalize the entire student body, so there's no diversity or there's no people being left out of certain groups. And I think for this school that it really showed how much they appreciated the different perspectives and the different cultures in their school and the multicultural aspect of their school, that they focused on this and actually had a policy for students to talk in their own language or their first language, instead of forcing them to always communicate in English, and make sure that everyone can understand, because they naturally did that in class anyway. And outside of class, they could help each other gain better understanding of certain issues, which is not a policy I'd seen before or heard of before. So yes, this was a British system school, and it's a system that actually fits my teaching style very well. I learned this year, along with the Canadian system, and for next year I really want to see how that Canadian system works in practice, along with maybe some other systems. But for me, the focus lies on British and Canadian systems, because I know that the combination of traditional style, structure, curriculum in combination with interactive activities is something that I can work with, or like I want to work with, like learn to work with in a sense. That will be the focus of my goals for next year. Seeing that, I guess, observing those different systems and teaching in different systems.